What's going on, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of my video build log of the Maxford USA Hughes H1 Racer version 2. I'm DJ Moose, and you can see in the back the Hughes is there. It might not look that different from the episode 2, but in this episode I'm going to zoom in and show you how I mounted both the elevator servo and the rudder servo along with their pushrod connections and epoxying the ball links to the rear connections and show you how all of that is hooked up. And so before we go into that, I just wanted to thank again everyone for coming. I'm getting better at this, and video editing and making these videos is also a hobby. So I'm learning as I go. Hopefully it sounds a little bit better with the Yeti here. Hopefully it looks a little bit better with a little bit newer camera. And one thing I wanted to say is in episode 1, some people might think I was poking fun at Maxford USA for their really short response in regards to that easy connector on the rudder control arm. And in reality, I was just pointing out that they responded. And I think in this day and age, that's more than can be said for some manufacturers. So they responded. And in fact, when we get to the wings, I emailed them again about the landing gear, and they also responded. So no hate on Maxford. They respond to every one of my questions, and that's a great thing. In fact, when we zoom into the Hughes in this episode, I also emailed Pro Modeler about the elevator servo, and I'll get into the details of that when we zoom in. So thanks for tuning in. Hopefully these are getting better, and I think in the next episode we'll start to see visually some more progress on the H1. So let's zoom on in and see what we got. So here are the elevator and rudder servos, and forgive the motion. I'm trying out a new handheld gimbal, so if this makes me sick watching it, then I won't use it again, but I thought it was fun. Play around with it. So on the top you can see the silver elevator servo, and you can see that there is some wood on the front and in back of it, and that is because the servo itself is very tall, and just based on geometry, to be able to get it into its mount hole, you had to elongate it enough, but then because of that, the tabs didn't really have a good place to grip for mounting. So I just put some extra pieces of wood in there for a mount. And the large one in the back is not glued in, it's secured with a servo screw because I want to be able to remove the servo at some point. So it actually worked out really well because raising the servo, the height of that light ply, allowed the control arm to not have to bend that push rod, and it was actually needed to be raised a little bit, so it actually worked out in the end. So, and when I talked about emailing Pro Modeler, I actually emailed them about this. I'm like, am I missing anything? Because it seems like the mounting tabs on this little servo aren't big enough, because to put it in a hole, you have to make that hole a certain size, and that size is kind of too big for those mounting holes. And he agreed and also suggested just use some extra pieces of wood in there. So that's what we did. And that's the elevator servo. You can see it connected to the push rod. Nothing too fancy about the rudder servo. It's not as tall, so I didn't have to do anything fancy to mount it. I did have to enlarge the hole, but not enough where the tabs didn't have a good grip. So found a horn and oriented it so it was 90 degrees to the case about, and hooked up the push rod, and that's the rudder servo. So there you go, the inside of the Hughes. That's what it looks like with the two servos installed. And now let's go over to the tail. So this is the elevator push rod into the elevator control horn, and you can see that I just had a nice little ball link with, you can see the epoxy there, so that thing is not coming out anytime soon. And basically you have the bolt, a washer, the ball link, another washer, and then over here you have a washer and then the lock nut. And if we look over here at the rudder control horn, you can see that little ball link I have there that is epoxied to the push rod going through the fuse, and that's how we have connectivity to the rudder. And also the other thing you can see here, you can see some Blenderm on the bottom of the elevator. That is how I sealed the hinge. So both sides there. I had a roll of 1-inch Blenderm and got those nice and hinged, so when we're going pretty fast, the elevator will be a little bit more effective. So there's the back end of the Hughes H1.